Vichaya Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki, Grantaraj Śhrīmad-Bhāgavatam Ki, Gaur Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru, Shri Guranga, and Shri Shri Radha Govinda Deva Ki. Nama Om Vishwadaya Krishna Prasthava Śrīmati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Chandra Sesha. Do you know how to turn this on? Reading from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, Volume 6, chapter titled At Home in India. We left at the point where Srila Prabhupada rushed back to India for his imminent meeting with the Prime Minister, Indira Gandhi. The other points in Srila Prabhupada's list were scriptural directions for how the Prime Minister could make her leadership Krishna conscious. In the spirit of the great Rajarshis of the Vedic age, these were the same tenets of Krishna conscious leadership he preached wherever he went, and he had deep conviction that if the world's leaders would apply them, an era of peace, prosperity, and happiness would dawn. Indira Gandhi had a tendency toward authoritative control, so she should exercise it in terms of Vedic directions. Then her rule could become most effective and beneficial. A government official opened the door to Srila Prabhupada's car, ushered him into the house, and brought him before the Prime Minister. As Prabhupada entered the room, Mrs. Gandhi stood up. Although she greeted him cordially and offered him a seat, he could immediately detect that she was distracted, fearful for her life. She openly admitted it, and added that this was not, therefore, a good time for their meeting. Prabhupada felt that she would have preferred not to meet at all, but was allowing it only because she had promised. Her agreeing to see him, he felt, was an indication that she had some attraction for spiritual life. But he understood that on this visit, at least, he could not introduce the extensive advice he had been contemplating. Mrs. Gandhi complimented Srila Prabhupada on the work he was doing all over the world. "They are good boys," he replied, and he asked if she could arrange for permanent visas. She agreed, but again mentioned her present anxiety. They soon ended their talk, and Srila Prabhupada left. A few days later, while still in New Delhi, Srila Prabhupada received a letter from Rameshwar. The BBT in Los Angeles was miraculously fulfilling Srila Prabhupada's order to publish 17 volumes within 2 months. The composers, editors, artists, and workers had ecstatically finished their marathon on schedule. When the first books had come back from the printers and had been offered on the altar of Rukmini Dwarkadish, the devotees had cried in transcendental bliss, chanting and again the mantras to Srila Prabhupada. They were feeling the potency of the order of their spiritual master and seeing themselves as instruments in carrying out what had once seemed an impossible request. This is from the letter. "Today our composer finished the last volumes of Chaitanya Charitamrita. By Wednesday next week, August 20th, all volumes will be at the printer. Now they are just starting to compose the 5th canto, and the entire canto will definitely be at the printer by Vyas Puja Day. After promising delivery of the books by October at the latest, the letter was signed by about 60 devotees. Your unworthy servants at ISKCON Pressed." On their behalf, Rameshwar stated, "We have lost all desire to do anything except be engaged in producing and distributing your transcendental books by the millions in every town and village." Srila Prabhupada wrote back the next day from Delhi, "Regarding your desire for all 12 cantos, you will get it, rest assured. Your so much ardent desire will be fulfilled by Krishna." On August 21st, Rameshwar sent Srila Prabhupada a telegram. in all caps, by the mercy of Lord Balaram Nityananda, the last volume of Chaitanya Charitamrita is leaving today for the printer. By your mercy and divine order, it is done. Although Srila Prabhupada traveled on to Vrindavan, the devotees were able to dispatch advance copies of all 15 volumes to him by his 80th birthday on August 31st. Just after Prabhupada observed the ceremony in the temple, a devotee arrived in Vrindavan with the final 6 volumes of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. With great relish and satisfaction, Srila Prabhupada examined the books. He was pleased with the artwork and quickly became absorbed in reading the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. He felt so inspired, he remarked to the devotees in Vrindavan that he was thinking of stopping all touring and just staying in Vrindavan and translating. The reciprocation of the devotees at ISKCON Press was so sincere that it increased Srila Prabhupada's desire to reciprocate with them. He wrote to My dear Rameshwaran Company, you have taken seriously the publishing and also the distribution of these books, and that is the success of our mission. You have taken seriously this work, and I know that my Guru Maharaj is pleased with you because he wanted this. So by this endeavor, you will all go back home, back to Godhead. Although Srila Prabhupada had mentioned that he would like to sit in Vrindavan and simply translate Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, his stay there was characterized by intensive management, not by writing. He had presided over the grand opening of the Krishna Balaram Mandir 4 months earlier, and now he would demonstrate how the temple should be run. The Krishna Balaram Mandir was a Vedic temple complex at a famous holy place, and it was being scrutinized by persons already strongly opinionated on how a temple should be run. Immediately, Prabhupada found discrepancies in the guest house, which was for guests, not disciples. He found married disciples living with their children. This was not proper, he said, and these families would have to find other quarters nearby or leave Vrindavan. He also found problems with the plumbing, the municipal sewage system, the financial management, the deity worship, the cleanliness, and the devotee's behavior. Almost every area of temple life and every devotee required special attention. In the smallest discrepancies, Prabhupada would sometimes see the essence of all the problems, and he would instantly point it out. And because his disciples took his words with utmost seriousness as coming directly from Krishna, his reprimands were often devastating. Prabhupada was a difficult taskmaster. A Vaishnava is said to be as soft as a rose and as hard as a thunderbolt. But Prabhupada began showing more the thunderbolt side of his personality. Sometimes a neophyte's conception of the spiritual master is that he must always be peaceful and pleased with everything that happens, and that this is a sign of his being situated in transcendental consciousness. Srila Prabhupada, however, demonstrated many moods, including anger. In its material form, anger, krodha, is described in Bhagavad Gita as occurring when one's lust, kama, cannot be fully satisfied. A true sadhu, therefore, he does not have any lusty desires, does not become possessed by anger. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, 2nd Canto, 2nd Chapter, Text 27. Chapter entitled The Lord in the Heart. Na yatra shoko na jara na mrityur natir na sodvega rete kutaschit yach chit tato dha kripayanidam bidang duranta dukkha prabhavanudarshanat nayatra shokana jarana mrityur natir nachodvegarite kutaschit Yachitatoda kripyanidam vidam. Yachitatoda kripayanidam vidam. Duranta dukkha prabhavanu darshanat. Duranta dukkha prabhavanu darshanat. Please chant. Nayatra shokana jarana mrityor. Natirna chodbegarite kutaschit. Yachitatoda kripyanadam vidam. Duranta dukkha prabhavanu darshanat. Na, never. Yatra, there are. Shoka, bereavement. Na, nor. Jana, jara, old age. Na, nor. Mrityu, death. Na, nor. Arti, pains. Na, nor. Cha, also. Udbega, anxieties. Rite, save and accept. Kutaschit, sometimes. Yet, because of. Chit, consciousness. Tatak, therefore. Adak, compassion. Kripaya, out of heartfelt sympathy. An idam bidam, of those who are ignorant of the process of devotional service. Duranta, unsurpassable. Dukkha, misery. Prabhava, repeated birth and death. Anudarshanat, by successive experience. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, ACBSP Swami Prabhupada. In that planet of Satyaloka, there is neither bereavement, nor old age, nor death. There is no pain of any kind, and therefore there are no anxieties, save that sometimes, due to consciousness, there is a feeling of compassion for those unaware of the process of devotional service, who are subjected to unsurpassable miseries in the material world. Please repeat. In that planet of Satyalok, there is neither bereavement, nor old age, nor death. There is no pain of any kind, and therefore there are no anxieties, save that sometimes, due to consciousness, there is a feeling of compassion for those unaware of the process of devotional service, who are subjected to unsurpassable miseries in the material world. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Foolish men of materialistic temperament do not take advantage of successive authorized knowledge. The Vedic knowledge is authorized and is acquired not by experiment, but by authentic statements of the Vedic literatures explained by bona fide authorities. Simply by becoming an academic scholar, one cannot understand the Vedic statements. One has to approach the real authority who has received the Vedic knowledge by disciplic succession. As clearly explained in the Bhagavad Gita 4.2, Lord Krishna affirmed that the system of knowledge as explained in Bhagavad Gita was explained to the sun god, and the knowledge descended by disciplic succession from the sun god to his son Manu, and from Manu to King Ikshvaku, the forefather of Lord Ramachandra. And thus the system of knowledge was explained down the line of great sages, one after another. But in due course of time, the authorized succession was broken, and therefore, just to establish the true spirit of the knowledge, the Lord again explained the same knowledge to Arjuna, who was a bona fide candidate for understanding due to his being a pure devotee of the Lord. Bhagavad Gita, as it was understood by Arjuna, is also explained. Bhagavad Gita 10:12-13. But there are many foolish men who do not follow in the footsteps of Arjuna in understanding the spirit of Bhagavad Gita. They create instead their own interpretations, which are as foolish as they themselves, and thereby only help to put a stumbling block on the path of real understanding, misdirecting the innocent followers who are less intelligent, or the Shudras. It is said that one should become a Brahmana before one can understand the Vedic statements. And this stricture is as important as the stricture that no one shall become a lawyer who has not qualified himself as a graduate. Such a stricture is not an impediment in the path of progress for anyone and everyone, but it is necessary for an unqualified, it is not an impediment in the path of progress, but it is necessary for an unqualified understanding of a particular science. Vedic knowledge is misinterpreted by those who are not qualified Brahmanas. A qualified Brahman is one who has undergone strict training under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master. The Vedic wisdom guides us to understanding our relations with the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna and to acting accordingly in order to achieve the desired result of returning home back to Godhead. But materialistic men do not understand this. They want to make a plan to become happy in a place where there is no happiness. For false happiness, they try to reach other planets, either by Vedic rituals or by spacecraft. But they should know for certain that any amount of materialistic adjustment for becoming happy in a place which is meant for distress cannot benefit the misguided man, because, after all, the whole universe, with all its paraphernalia, will come to an end after a certain period. Then all plans of materialistic happiness will automatically come to an end. The intelligent person, therefore, makes a plan to return home back to Godhead. Such an intelligent person surpasses all the pangs in material existence, like birth, death, disease, and old age. He is actually happy because he has no anxieties in material existence. But as a compassionate sympathizer, he feels unhappiness for the suffering materialistic men, and thus he occasionally comes before the materialistic men to teach them the necessity of going back to Godhead. All the bona fide acharyas preach this truth of returning home back to Godhead and warn men not to make a false plan for happiness in a place where happiness is only a myth. Om Jnana Timrandasya Gyananjana Shlakaya Chakshorma Tamina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langhate Gurim Yakripatapaham Bande Shri Gurum Dirataram. Translation again. In that planet of Satyalok, there is neither bereavement, nor old age, nor death. There is no pain of any kind, and therefore there are no anxieties, save that sometimes, due to consciousness, there is a feeling of compassion for those unaware of the process of devotional service, who are subjected to unsurpassable miseries in the material world. So this is an interesting perspective for the denizens of Satyalok. Compassion is typically acquired when one has some experience of the miserable conditions of the material world. But here it says that the planets, the inhabitants of that planet, they have no anxiety. They have no bereavement. Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma na sochiti na kankshiti. So then how do they have experience? How do they have compassion without having any experience? One knows good by juxtaposing what is bad. One knows evil by knowing what is good. So to have compassion means to have some experience of the suffering that the fallen conditioned souls are experiencing. Otherwise, what does compassion mean? It means you have higher appreciation, realization, and understanding about what is the goal of life. So therefore, only those personalities who have acquired complete faith in the process of devotional service can effectively preach, exercising compassion, knowing full well the nature of the material world, Martiloka, a place of suffering, a place of death. So in that sense, devotees in the material world are perfectly situated in order to give comfort to the fallen conditioned souls. Kali Kali, Nama Rupa Krishna Avatar. That in Kali Yuga, the holy name has descended. And by the strength of the holy name, Nama Chintamani Krishna Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha, the complete potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is imbued in those holy names. And so one personally takes shelter, not for his own selfish desires, but in order to become a fit candidate to please the spiritual master in his efforts to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Just as we saw in the Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita. The devotees were living only to execute Srila Prabhupada's order. Srila Prabhupada's order was their life and soul. And because it was their life and soul, therefore Srila Prabhupada became so much dedicated to them. Do we have someone outside to answer the doorbell? We'll pause. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So, the example in the marathon to print the Chaitanya Charitamrita is that within the instructions of the spiritual master there's all facility to accomplish the task. But somehow or other, as like Srila Prabhupada said, chant 16 rounds and be happy. So anyone who's chanting his rounds on a regular basis, he knows the truth of this matter. No one has to tell him or check on him. You can check. You can see in so many ways, there are many symptoms. How a person, when he's properly situated, what is his demeanor. And of course, we see that the first thing is that there is no anxiety. And that's that verse, Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma na sochati na kankshati sama sarveshu bhuteshu. So one who understands things in their proper perspective, he understands who is the Bhoktaram, who is the recipient of all sacrifices, of everything. Whatever one eats, whatever one offers, whatever one gives, whatever one does, yat karoshi, yat asnasi, yat jahosi dadasi, yat tapasyasi. Yat karoshi, whatever one does, he does as an offering. And so who are we? We're simply servants of the spiritual master. So who do we serve? We serve the spiritual master. He is serving Krishna. Just like when we make an offering to the spiritual master. He makes the offering to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We are not qualified to offer anything directly to Krishna. And therefore, when we train, we see how the offering is done on the altar. We're offering the mantras Idam Navejamayam Gurave Namaha. We're offering everything first to the spiritual master. Why? Because that is how we become trained, purified, qualified. So in all circumstances, we see that these instructions, they're meant to provide the impetus to take complete shelter in the spiritual master's instructions. It is difficult at times. Prabhupada used to joke. He said, ISKCON means the International Society for Rules and Regulations. Just as we saw, when he went to Vrindavan, just 4 months after the opening of the Krishna Balaram Mandir, opened in April 1975, so now it's August 1975. And so many things were problematic. And so you had to personally come and set things right. By example, how this should be done, how that should be done, and why. So there are two aspects. One is because the disciples need to understand things correctly. A lot of times, in the absence of Srila Prabhupada's direct instructions, devotees have a tendency to stray from the path in one sense. Not, excessively, but here you see, devotees are living in the guest house with their wives and children. So Prabhupada immediately said no. He didn't even have to say why. It should have been understandable. And this is the temple. This is the Krishna Balaram Mandir. We have people watching us. It's not meant to be simply a hotel. It's a guest house for guests. And after that instruction, anyone who went to live there, like Grihastas, he made some concession that they could live together with their families in the Goshala. But there's not much room in the Goshala. Goshala means we have a separate place, 12 acres, along the Parikram Marg. It's where we keep the cows and the gardens. The Tulsi was there, all the flower gardens were there, some sabji was there, many fruit trees, and of course, Krishna Balaram's cows. Okay, and there are some housing, just small rooms, very small. No connected bathrooms, nothing like that. No connected water. Everything is, you have outhouses, you have hand pump. It's like this. Devotees are expected to live like everyone else in Vrindavan. Very simply. So Prabhupada came and implemented that. So many things in that regard. How to maintain the temple. And he showed what is the priority. The priority is that he has personally invited their lordships to the temple. Now great care and attention must be taken care. They must be given every facility, that there's fresh flowers, punctuality, cleanliness, proper offerings, all these things have to be done very, very carefully. But devotees were slack. They had precious little funds. And Prabhupada chastised them. How did he chastise them? By telling them that you're so, in so many ways, he paraphrased. What he exactly said was, whatever we collect, whatever money we have, at least let us eat. He was putting himself and exposing the mentality of the management, that the deities weren't getting fresh flowers, everything was broken, but still the devotees were eating nicely. So, what are your priorities? What are your priorities? So, Mituna, I'm giving class. So it must be important, so you keep calling, but, you know. Okay, Best Buy's rhyme in 5 minutes. I guess we'll make arrangement. Thank you. We have a delivery in 5 minutes, so we'll have to take questions. Any questions, Prabhu? But we understand how, just the example, that we should never think that Krishna is simply a stone statue. That is the killer of the soul. You know, in the Ishopanishad, there's that one shloka. The killer of the soul is impersonalism. So for the devotee, he may try in many ways how to fix his mind and understand things through the eyes of Scripture. But whatever he doesn't understand, he has to have faith in the spiritual master, the pure devotee, who is an intimate associate of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and who allows us to worship the Lord in His name. This is the main thing, in His name. So we have to take great care not to bring shame or dishonor on the spiritual master. That is one of the devotees' prime directives, not to bring shame or dishonor on the name, fame of the spiritual master, which includes his society, ISKCON. All right, so we'll prepare for the arrival of our delivery. Śhrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki.